Burnout is not caused by doing too much. It's caused by something much stranger than that. Here's what the research actually shows: the harder you try to heal, the more you signal to your nervous system that something is wrong. And a nervous system that believes something is wrong cannot rest. It cannot recover. It doesn't matter how many tools you use. This is why you're still exhausted. Not because you haven't tried, but because trying, in the way most of us were taught to try, is itself the problem. What I want to share today is not another set of techniques. It's the underlying mechanism, the biology of why your body holds onto this state, and the physics of what it actually takes to shift it. Two sciences, completely different fields, pointing at the exact same place. Maybe something in here will land for you. Maybe it won't. But if any part of you has ever felt like you were doing everything right and still coming up empty, this might be worth sitting with. Let's start with a question that seems simple. Why are you exhausted? The most common answer we hear is, life is too stressful. You're overworked. You haven't learned to balance. And the solutions that follow usually sound like rest more, meditate more, set boundaries, learn to let go. None of that is wrong, but none of it is enough. And here's why. When we talk about exhaustion, most people think of it as a problem of the mind. You're overthinking, over-worrying. You need a mindset shift. But modern neuroscience is pointing to something very different. Exhaustion is not only a problem of thought. It is a problem of the autonomic nervous system, the system governing your heart rate, breath, digestion, sleep, and nearly every unconscious response you have, without you ever needing to tell it what to do. The autonomic nervous system has two main branches. First, the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight mode. When you face danger, when a deadline closes in, when conflict arises, this system ignites. Cortisol and adrenaline flood your bloodstream. Your heart accelerates. Your muscles tighten. Your brain shifts into maximum alert. Second, the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode. This is the state you need for healing, learning, connecting, and creating. In an ideal world, these two systems take turns naturally. Tension, then release. Challenge, then recovery. Like waves rising and falling. And this isn't just metaphor. Physics has long described reality at its most fundamental level in the same terms: oscillation, waves, rhythm. Every particle of matter is simultaneously a wave. Every stable system exists in dynamic equilibrium, not complete stillness, but oscillation within a certain range of rhythm. Your body is no exception. But here is the crisis of modern life. Most of us are living almost entirely in sympathetic mode without realizing it. Not because we face genuine danger, but because our brains cannot distinguish between a tiger chasing you and an email from your boss at 11 p.m. To the nervous system, both are threats. Both trigger the same biological response. And then something strange happens. When we stay in sympathetic mode too long, the body loses its ability to shift back into parasympathetic smoothly. You sit down to meditate, but your mind is still running. You go to bed, but sleep won't come. You take a weekend off, but still feel restless, hollow, or worse, guilty for doing nothing. You want to relax, but your body no longer knows how. This is not weakness. This is biology. I want to introduce you to one of the most important discoveries in modern neuroscience, a theory that has changed how we understand exhaustion, trauma, and human connection. It's called Polyvagal theory, developed by neuroscientist Stephen Porges. To understand it, you need to know about a remarkable nerve that runs from the brain down through most of the organs in your body, the vagus nerve. This nerve doesn't just regulate your heart and breath, it is a two-way bridge between your brain and everything else. About 80% of the signals traveling this nerve move from the body up to the brain, not the other way around. Your body is constantly talking to your brain, and your brain is listening, whether you're conscious of it or not. Porges discovered that the autonomic nervous system doesn't have two states, as we once believed. It has three. Think of them as three floors of an ancient building, constructed layer by layer across millions of years of evolution. The top floor is ventral vagal, the state of safety and social connection. When you're here, you feel present, curious, warm, capable of genuine connection with others and with yourself. You can think clearly. You can listen. You can feel joy and gratitude. This is where real creativity, healing, and growth happen. The middle floor is sympathetic mobilization and defense. When you sense threat, this floor activates. Energy surges. You fight or you flee. Anxiety, anger, competition, stress all originate here. This state isn't bad. It's necessary when real danger exists. The problem is when we get trapped here indefinitely. The bottom floor is dorsal vagal freeze and disconnection. This is the most ancient survival response. When the threat is overwhelming and neither fighting nor fleeing is possible, the nervous system does something counterintuitive. It shuts down. You go numb, distant, deeply depleted, cut off from yourself and others. That feeling of hollowness, meaninglessness, not wanting to do anything that is often the signature of this state. Your nervous system is continuously, moment by moment, scanning the environment inside and around you to determine where you are on this map. This process happens entirely beneath conscious awareness. Porges calls it neuroception, neural perception. Now this is where quantum physics steps in. And I want you to slow down and really hear this. In quantum physics, there is a foundational principle called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle at the quantum level. You cannot simultaneously know the precise position and momentum of a particle. But the deeper consequence, the one fewer people talk about, is this: a quantum particle has no fixed state before it is observed. It exists in a state of superposition, a cloud of probabilities containing every possible outcome until observation occurs. It is the act of observation itself that collapses that cloud into a single, concrete reality. Let that resonate with what we just said about neuroception. Your nervous system, like the observer in quantum physics, doesn't simply receive reality, it participates in creating the reality you experience. When your neuroception is locked in danger mode, your brain will selectively amplify and filter for signals that confirm that threat out of the infinite sea of information around you. Not because the world is actually more dangerous, but because the way you are observing is shaping what you perceive. This is not abstract philosophy. This is mechanism. And when you understand the mechanism, the question is no longer, how do I change the world outside me? But how do I change the state of the observer within? So let's return to the original question. You've tried. You've done everything right. So why are you still exhausted? Here is the paradox that neuroscience is uncovering. When you try to relax, try to be happy, try to change, the act of trying itself activates the sympathetic nervous system. Because trying implies effort. And effort implies that your brain has determined my current state is not enough. Something is wrong. Something must be fixed. And that signal, the signal that you are not enough, is precisely the kind of signal that fires a stress response. Quantum physics has a name for this, the quantum Zeno effect. When you observe a quantum particle too continuously, too intensely measuring it over and over without pause, you actually prevent it from evolving. The particle becomes frozen in its current state, unable to transition to a new one. Sound familiar? This is exactly what happens when you observe yourself too relentlessly, constantly checking whether you're good enough yet, whether you've changed yet, whether you're happy yet. That anxious observation, paradoxically, is the very thing keeping you in place. Think about it concretely. When you sit to meditate and the thought arises, I'm doing this wrong. I can't focus. Why is this so hard? You're no longer meditating. You're fighting yourself. When you exercise with the mentality of, I have to push through, I have to force it, your body is receiving a stress signal, not a care signal. When you read a self-help book with the underlying anxiety of look at everything I still haven't done, you're feeding the exhaustion loop, not escaping it. This is not your fault. This is how modern culture has taught us to approach growth. You are broken, and you need to fix yourself. But for the nervous system and for the quantum nature of reality, that message is a trap. Because the anxious, judging, constantly checking observer cannot create change. It can only reinforce the current state. Researcher Bessel van der Kolk, author of the landmark book, The Body Keeps the Score, spent decades studying how trauma is stored not in memory, but in the body. He found that people who have experienced prolonged stress, whether major trauma or the slow accumulation of everyday pressure, show real, measurable changes in how their nervous systems function. The regions of the brain responsible for language and rational thought become underactive. Meanwhile, the threat detection regions become hypersensitive. What does this mean in practice? It means that when you are in a state of deep exhaustion, talking yourself into a better mindset doesn't work well because the language centers are dimmed. You might know intellectually that everything will be okay, but your body doesn't believe it. This is why so much traditional talk therapy, focused purely on cognition and conversation, has limits for people who are exhausted at a deep neurological level. And this is why you can know you don't need to worry. Know you've done enough. Know you deserve rest and still not feel any of it. Because feeling doesn't come from thinking. It comes from the state of the inner observer, from the nervous system, from the body, from the frequency at which your entire system is oscillating. So if trying is not the answer, what is? This is where the story begins to turn. And I want you to really hear this part, because it runs counter to almost everything you've been taught about change. The path is not to force the nervous system into a better state. The path is to create the conditions for the nervous system to regulate itself back to safety. In quantum physics, there is a phenomenon called entrainment or quantum resonance, when two oscillating systems are placed near each other. They tend to synchronize their frequencies, not because one forces the other, but because synchronized oscillation represents the lowest energy, most stable state that both systems naturally move toward. You don't coerce harmony. You create the conditions for it to emerge. Your nervous system operates on the same principle. When you repeatedly expose yourself to experiences, people, and environments that your nervous system recognizes as safe, it begins to entrain with that frequency of safety. Not because you argued it into compliance, but because you let it stay close enough, long enough, to what it needs in order to self-regulate. Here is what that actually looks like, grounded in real science, not hollow advice. First, breath, but not the way you've been taught. When your exhale is longer than your inhale, you are directly activating the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system through the vagus nerve. Inhale for 4 seconds. Exhale for 6 to 8. No complicated meditation technique required. No 30-minute session needed. Just a few minutes, a few times a day. And the body begins to learn a new signal: this is safe. Second, conscious movement, especially slow, rhythmic movement that reconnects you with physical sensation. Yoga, a slow walk in nature. Swimming, dancing not to burn calories, but to bring attention back into the body. When your nervous system is frozen, it loses connection with physical feeling. Gentle movement is how you rebuild that connection. Third, and this is something social science is emphasizing more and more, is safe social connection. Polyvagal theory shows that the human nervous system is wired to regulate through other people. When you're near someone, your nervous system reads as safe through their voice, their gaze, their warmth. Your ventral vagal state activates. Not through conversation, through presence. This is why a real conversation, a real embrace, a genuine smile from someone you trust can do what hours of solo meditation cannot. And if you want to understand this through the lens of quantum physics, think of quantum entanglement. Two particles that have interacted continue to influence each other, regardless of the distance between them. Connection, once established, does not simply disappear. The human nervous system, shaped by millions of years of evolution inside social communities, carries its own version of that principle. We genuinely affect one another at a depth that goes far beyond words. Fourth, awareness of the present state without judging it. And here we return to quantum principles one final time, but from a different angle. In the famous double-slit experiment, particles of light are fired toward two openings. When no measuring device is present, they create an interference pattern behaving like waves, spreading through both slits simultaneously. But the moment a measuring device is introduced, the moment there is observation, the particles suddenly behave like solid objects, choosing a single path. The nature of reality shifts depending on how it is observed. The same is true of your inner life. When you observe your internal state with curiosity and non-judgment, not trying to change it, not labeling it good or bad, you are creating a different kind of observation. Not the observation of the anxious judge, but the observation of the curious scientist. And that quality of attention, paradoxically, is what allows the inner state to freely evolve. I want you to step back now and look at the entire journey we've taken in this video and notice one thing. Neuroscience says your nervous system is shaped by experience. It learns safety through resonance, not coercion. Real transformation happens when you create conditions for the body to return to its foundational state, not when you conquer it. Quantum physics says reality, at its most fundamental level, is not made of rigid objects in space. It is fields of energy, probabilities, correlations. The observer doesn't stand outside reality. Looking in the observer is part of reality, and the quality of observation shapes what is observed. And the timeless wisdom traditions from Buddhism and Vedanta to the ancient contemplative lineages have been saying something equivalent in their own language. For thousands of years, you are not separate from reality. You are a part of it. And awakening is not the achievement of a new state. It is the recognition of the foundational state that has always been here. 3 different languages, 3 different paths, all pointing to the same place. I want to leave you with this. There will not be a day when you are never pulled into sympathetic or dorsal vagal again. Life will keep throwing its challenges at you. People you love will say things that hurt. Work will have bad days. The world will not stop shifting. Awakening doesn't mean you become unmoved by all of it. Awakening means you know the way home. And every time you return, even just one long exhale, one moment of resting a hand on your chest and feeling your heartbeat, 1 second of sitting quietly in afternoon light, you are doing something both neuroscience and quantum physics confirm. You are reestablishing the connection between the observer and reality. You are allowing your system to resonate back toward its fundamental frequency. Your brain is not fixed. The reality you experience is not sealed. And you, the observer sitting here right now, have far more capacity to shape that reality than you have ever been taught to believe. You are not broken. You are simply learning your way back home.